Hello, my name is Dred, and welcome once again to Miss Valley Entertainment News. If you're tired of hearing about the greed and corruption of gaming studios, gaming companies, game designers, then do something about it. My challenge to you is don't back away from the hard discussions. We need to have open and honest discussions where we bring to light what's going on and not shy away from it. And we need to start making sure that the word gets out. This is not a good thing. We're going down a wrong path in general, different areas. And if we don't course correct, and we as the consumer have to be the course corrector, if we do not course correct, we are going into the death of gaming. Now, that may be a bit of hyperbole to say the death of gaming, but I'm telling you, you don't want this to get to where all the studios are all corrupt and all just care about making a quick buck off you. If that's all we have, the games are going to be shit and we're all going to go broke. So, again, open and honest conversations. We have to bring to light the corruption, the greed, the things that go on, and have these conversations, even though I know sometimes we all get sick of them. We get tired of it. We're like, I've heard this a million times. I don't need to hear it again. Yes, you do. And if not you, then somebody else out there does need to hear it, because people need to be aware of these things. They need to be aware so they can begin to vote with their dollar. Okay? You need to course correct using your power as a consumer. So once again, we're going to jump in. We're going to take a look at a video here, which will be linked down below to the original video. Please go by the original video if you like what's going on here and give it a like and a follow and a thumbs up and a comment and all that good stuff. Original video is by Captain Meaty, and we're going to be taking a first look at this. I have not gone through this video at all yet, so we'll see what it is. But it's called The Sad State of Bethesda Games. Let's get into it. Oh, I guess clicking the thumbs up button won't make the video run. My bad. Jeez.
Bethesda Game Studios. Few names in the video game industry are as well known and divisive amongst people as Bethesda. This company, known for many things such as developing fan-favorite games like the Elder Scrolls and Fallout series, are also synonymous with fun and quirky things such as game-breaking bugs and performance issues, paid mods, mediocre writing,
but the child refused to follow
the father's selfless example,
and just being an overall PR nightmare. Bethesda has gained a reputation for promising one thing and delivering another.
The next-gen PC game. We really do push the technologies. It features all new rendering, lighting, and landscape.
I've had arguments with people already on my channel who say that no, Bethesda and Todd Howard have not lied about anything. As I have said and will continue to say, if you believe that you have your head in the sand, we'll say it nicely, you have your head in the sand and you're ignoring the facts out there, or you're insulating yourself against any facts that go against what you want. You're living in a little bit of a fantasy world if you think Bethesda, and especially Todd Howard as a spokesperson, have not lied continually about their games, their products, etc. The facts are all out there. Research it yourself.
Technology. It allows us to have 16 times the detail.
Spawning such classic phrases as, "It just works."
It's not, I'm not kidding.
Don't worry though, modders will fix the game and Bethesda will try to monetize it.
Hopefully
in recent
not.
years, they become the figurehead for some of the most hyped yet somehow most mid-gaming experiences of the modern day, and so I'd like to take a look at that. How did this once beloved developer go from making critically acclaimed games such as Oblivion to telling users, actually you're wrong, our game isn't boring, you're just playing it wrong, in the Starfield reviews?
Yeah.
Why is it that when Todd goes on stage to use his level 100 speech stat to tell us sweet little lies and show us a JPEG of Elder Scrolls 6, does everyone collectively hop on the hype train and ride it directly into Starfield's procedurally generated phallic-shaped moon? This video will be one part history lesson, one part partially informed rant, so take your seats and get ready.
Excellent.
I'll be taking a brief look.
So he's already said he's going to rant, but he's also going to be giving facts and backing up his rants, and that's good. I like it.
Back at some history of the company, what led up to the recent releases, leading to my main complaints. Note that this is partially my opinion, so if you're a diehard Bethesda stan, you may want to click off now before I start tearing into the Lord and Savior God Howard. With all of that out of the way, this is the sad state of Bethesda Games.
Oh boy.
Let's start in the year of our Lord 2001 with the founding of Bethesda Game Studios, Bethesda's in-house development team. Prior to this, Bethesda had no separation between its publishing and development sides, so in an attempt to grow the development end of the company, they branched off a small team of roughly 40 people into their own first-party game studio, with the oh-so-charismatic Todd Howard at the helm acting as executive producer. At the time of me writing this, they've expanded to 450, which is still relatively low compared to most AAA developers. Anyway, during this time they developed The Elder Scrolls Morrowind. Running on the Gamebryo engine, take note of this, it'll be important later, the game was praised for its open-ended but detailed world design, allowing the player to tackle the game as they please. Due to this, its emphasis on RPG mechanics, and well-written story, it soon became a commercial and critical success, selling 200,000 units by September of that year. And to this day, it's widely considered one of the best Elder Scrolls by many. Sure, it still had some of that classic Bethesda charm,
What say you? What say you? What say you? What say you?
but it was a revolutionary game for its time. Fast
its
forward to
time.
2006 and the release of Oblivion. This is more of what people wanted, with a few quality of life touch-ups, but overall playing it very safe here. The RPG mechanics and other aspects were streamlined down to be less daunting for people not looking to read an instruction manual on leveling a character, or softlock their game by killing an essential quest NPC. Where this game did make some innovative strides is with the development of the Radiant AI system, which is basically just a system that dictates how NPCs behave in-game. The system was designed to make the AI have goals and schedules, and it allows for the game world to feel more alive and dynamic. This was partially made due to criticisms about Morrowind's NPC AI, not that this one is much better at times.
Farewell.
Ooh. Ow.
May you rest in peace.
Aw, gee.
Wowzers. Okay, so I've played very, very little of either Morrowind or Oblivion, just very, very small parts of the beginning. Because I didn't play them when they came out. Obviously I got into Skyrim, and I got into Skyrim about 2014-ish. I believe it was 2014. So even that had been out for a couple of years before I ever got into it. Going back to Morrowind and Oblivion is very difficult for me. Because they're very, very dated games, and I don't have any memories of being a younger person and, throwing myself into them when they first came out. So I don't really talk too much about Oblivion, Morrowind, Daggerfall, all those older games, because what I do know is they're almost universally loved, and I understand that people who had experiences with them when the games came out, a lot of them fell in love with those games and stand by that, and that's honestly your opinion. I won't argue it with you. I don't know enough to have an opinion. I just know nowadays to go to try to play those games, never having played them before, they are so dated, I can't do it. But they obviously made some groundbreaking decisions during those games that affected the whole genre.
This is actually the same system they use in future games, just building upon it in later installments. It's a recurring theme with this company patchworking their older technology into newer versions, for better or worse, which I'll get into shortly. You can also start to see Bethesda's method of monetization here, too. To this day, Bethesda gets mocked for the infamous Horse Armor DLC, which, for those who don't know, is just cosmetic horse armor that was sold for $250 at launch. This is commonplace today in most games, but at the time people thought it was ridiculous, and oftentimes in articles that talk about this, they trace the microtransaction-ridden hellscape that we live in now back to this, a trend that they would unfortunately try again later. 2008 gave us Fallout 3, Bethesda's next big hit. Todd, during an interview, slightly exaggerates the amount of endings in the game.
How's that coming along, that part of the project?
Being that we are Bethesda, everything gets a bit big, so as of last week, we're over 200 endings. That is not an exaggeration.
But surely this would be the only time.
Okay, so that means either he did lie or they just pared them back afterwards, but still it's pretty bad form to say how many endings there are going to be to your game, or there currently are for your game, and then your game comes out and it's got a tenth of that amount. Makes you look like a fool. But Todd doesn't care about looking like a fool, does he? I know a lot of you out there still love Todd Howard. He's iconic. He's as iconic or more iconic than Bethesda is, because he is the face of the company, and he is a very, very good at what he does. He's a pitchman. He's the face in front of the cameras that everybody wants to like. And because of that, people tend to believe what he says. And that's a problem, because what he says is not always true. And I don't believe for a moment that that's by accident. I don't believe he's like, oops, I guess I must have misspoke, or he just misquotes something, or I believe a lot of what he says is in order to draw people to their games coming out and make sure they sell well. And he's willing to lie about it, quite honestly. And yes, there are numerous examples of that all over the internet. Go search for yourself. I'm not pulling them up. I got a life.
I'm right.
Of course, you can play this solo. All right?
Anyway, selling nearly 5 million copies in its first week, the game was an almost instant success. I don't really have much to say about this one, because it was generally pretty good aside from some laughably bad writing at certain points. This won't be the end of it either. And some issues with performance. Plus, without this game, we wouldn't have objectively the best game in existence. Fallout 3 walked so that New Vegas could run. The Mad Lads over at Obsidian saw Fallout 3 and said, hey, that's pretty cool, but we could make it even cooler. And so they did.
Of course they could.
And that's how on the 7th day, God gave us the best video game known to man. Amen. Success after success, Bethesda was at the top of their game. Hailed as one of the best companies in AAA gaming, and looked upon fondly by most, they seemed like they could do no wrong and shit out gold forever. However, nothing lasts forever, and in the coming years, their fallout of grace would come gradually over the course of the next few titles. In 2011, Skyrim made its debut, and just like Smash Mouth said, it started coming and it won't stop coming, since we got re-releases in 2016, 2017, and 2021 for almost every platform imaginable. I've heard of Doom running on literally everything, but this is just getting ridiculous now. Something noteworthy here is the development of the Creation Engine, which is essentially just an updated version of the Gamebryo engine that they've been working with since the early days. Being based on the Gamebryo engine, that means it comes with all of the same old jank that you're used to, but with some all-new jank as well.
So it's not just a 2009 engine or whatever they said it was. It's actually a 2001 engine. It's the engine they've had since then and just continued to work on. They just rebranded it. So it's literally over 20-year-old engine. Makes me wonder if Bethesda is just not able to go and work on another engine. Like, did they just not have any knowledge of anything except for this one engine? Like the people in the company? I don't have an answer to that, but it makes me wonder.
Despite that, Skyrim sold over 7 million units in its first week, which is nothing to scoff at.
Nope.
And while the world felt well crafted and the graphics were pretty, I do have some complaints. The plot wasn't great. It's the Bethesda go-to, you're the chosen one, go fight the big bad guy.
Typical.
And while not necessarily bad, it's the same thing that we've seen before, and many people I know don't even bother with the main quest anyway.
Nope, true.
The game was sold as an action RPG, but the combat was kind of bare bones, and the RPG elements weren't very in-depth. You didn't really...
Well, okay, I think the combat was okay for its time. Not great, but it was okay. And I really think the combat, again, I think... From what I understand, like Morrowind with the spells was great, right? And then they started to dumb it down by the time they got to Skyrim. I think they dumbed it down for Oblivion as well a little bit. Oblivion upped the NPCs, and people feel like the NPCs weren't as good in Skyrim. I kind of disagree on that, but I think they wanted the combat to be accessible to everyone. And you could do it. You could run out with the sword and a shield. You could run out with your sword and a spell. Or just use your spells to two-hand. It was very accessible. It was accessible. Anybody felt like they could pick it up and do it pretty quickly. And that helped to, catapult their game to the heights it reached, sales and otherwise. It was an accessible game. And it was still really good. I don't think Skyrim is a bad game. That's aside all the bugs and everything else, not even talking about those, but at its core, it was a really good and fairly ambitious game. No, it was not trying to be a Dark Souls game. It was not trying to have the hardest combat out there. It was not trying to, appeal to the people who wanted the hardest game. No. They wanted it to appeal to the masses, and they really hit it on the head, and both with the game and probably the marketing as well. Just tell by the way it's sold. So, to me, this is the heyday of Bethesda. You again may like another of the games that came before or after better, but to me, this is where they were at their best. and it still had some glaring holes. Okay, they were not was not a professionally tuned up game. Let's put it that way. But it's like they stopped tinkering with it at the right time and just put it out, and it just worked. And a lot of people got hooked on it. A lot of people got hooked on it.
You really have to pick a build to specialize in, since you could eventually become overpowered at every skill.
Yes,
For example, you make a stealth character that just so happens to stumble upon the Mage Guild and become the leader of that, despite having the magical prowess of Plankton from that one episode of SpongeBob.
Yep. It's possible.
Generally, the combat boils down to just keep swinging your weapons and pounding cheese wheels until everything's dead. And that works for like 90% of the enemies.
True. That is true.
On top of that, the UI was not good and the dialogue didn't really matter. And I'm not saying that every game has to have New Vegas level.
UI was bad. I mean, I very seldom play unmodded Skyrim anymore, so I'm using Sky UI, which is great.
Levels of branching dialogue, but a little more player choice would have been nice. This last one's more of a personal thing, but all of
the conversations you have with characters in the game was very bare bones for sure, but it was a great base platform for modders to expand upon, and the modders have done some wonderful work with that to make the game feel a lot more alive and interesting. So without the base they laid down for that, and then the ease to up the ante by the modders, we wouldn't have the great modded game you can have nowadays, which is entertaining, can be as difficult as you want, can look more like a totally other game than Skyrim, and play like a totally other game than Skyrim, but yet still be set in Tamriel in this fantasy setting with the same characters. You know, I mean, honestly, a lot of my love of Skyrim really comes from modding. I did not personally get into Skyrim when it first came out, because I kind of saw a little bit and went, eh. But as soon as I began to see clips and things of people who had modded the game, I got really interested. I was like, wow, you can make that game look and play like this? And that was in 2014. There were, you know, think about how much better the mods are nowadays than they were then. And I mean, I tried to, you know, back in 2014, 2015, trying to put together a mod list of 30 mods and get it working without crashing was extremely difficult. Now you can have 4,000 mods some of these lists have. Pretty friggin' incredible. And that's on this janky engine that Bethesda says just works. It doesn't seem to know how to fix anything on. So, yeah, anyways, let's go on.
All of the dungeons felt like the same thing copy-pasted over and over, with a few exceptions. Typically, you grab a quest, go to some ruins, fight 69 Draugr, maybe solve a puzzle, loot, and repeat. This is a bit of an oversimplification, but take any dungeon screenshot and try and tell me the difference. These could all be personal gripes to me, and if you enjoyed the game, that's totally cool.
What was better back in the day?
At it, there were some flaws.
What was
However,
better in
they weren't
2011?
offensively bad until the next game in line. Also, edit. In the middle of me writing this, they added paid mods to Skyrim in the most recent update, which I think is just a fun feature to add for a decade-old single-player game. This is where most of my arguments come in, since it had the most egregious implementations of them. Similarly to the preceding game, the plot wasn't great, the dialogue was even worse at certain points, and now the skill and perk system has been dumbed down into basically nothing but stat boosts. And while that makes the game accessible to people who don't care much for RPGs, it also takes so much away from the core of the gameplay. Remember in 3 and New Vegas, where you'd pick a perk or invest points in a stat, and generally speaking would do something unique for gameplay? That's gone, fuck you, no fun for you. Have 20% more healing from stim packs. Same with the dialogue system. Remember when having certain perks or skills gave you unique dialogue options? No more of that. Have a wheel with 2 flavors of yes, 1 for no, and maybe a question in there. Fallout was also marketed as an action RPG, but one that was streamlined down so much that it just made it a lukewarm experience. Bethesda had id Software, the people who made Doom and Wolfenstein, handle the gunplay, which is at least better now than previous games, as well as a few quality of life things like sprinting and having a button for grenades. Those were some of my few praises for the game. However, it feels to me like every other generic open-world first-person shooter-looter, just with a Fallout skin on top. And honestly, I'm kind of sick of every game trying to be that, but that's a topic for another day. Streamlining all these elements down, in my opinion, took away what made Fallout interesting to begin with, and while there's a few side quests here and there that were interesting or had some neat concepts, it was few and far between. Gone are the days that you can approach a quest in any way you want. You will go to this dungeon, you will shoot everything in sight, you will loot some stuff and come back. On that note, I couldn't really find myself invested with the main plot, as all the factions were just boring one-note characters, which generally isn't how things work. Much like the real world, there's a lot of gray area, and that's what makes characters interesting and worth getting invested in.
That's true.
Going back to New Vegas, each faction had pros and cons, and you could choose who you side with based on your
I don't think Bethesda's very good at writing characters, making them feel like real people. Sometimes they're not very good at that at all.
own personal beliefs. Having nuanced characters isn't necessary, but I think it adds a nice layer of complexity. The best villains are the ones that you can relate to, not just comically bad for the sake of bad.
Like Solus in Dragon Age Inquisition. He becomes the villain after he's working with you, and you get to understand throughout the game, once you figure it out, why he's doing what he's doing, even though he's going to destroy everything and hurt so many people. But you still get to understand why he does it. That's a well-written character and a well-written villain. Different franchise, obviously, but yeah.
This one also had the shitty paid mods, which, in their defense, are mostly cosmetic, and funny enough, they added horse power armor as a nod to the horse armor in Oblivion. Acknowledging it doesn't make it any less sad, but at least it's kind of funny. Some areas ran atrociously bad, and the building system that they hyped up hardly worked. Basically, making the game run well and be somewhat enjoyable takes tons of tinkering and modding until it's an entirely different game. Anyway, we have to move on or I'll sit here nitpicking Fallout 4 all day. Next up is somehow even worse than this. I'm not going to talk in a ton of detail about this, since everyone online already has, so I'm only going to briefly go over a few things. If you want a more in-depth look, Internet Historian made a very comprehensive video about it a few years ago, so check that out. In 2018, Todd goes on stage to announce the next Fallout game. Many people were hyped for it, and as he stands there lying through his shiny, perfect teeth about the game, touting the size of the map and the fidelity of its graphics, and finally finishing by saying it's a multiplayer game.
And it's our biggest one yet. It is 4 times the size of Fallout 4. To have 16 times the detail. Yes, Fallout 76 is entirely online.
Which, if you're me, is an immediate red flag. Since the series has always been a single-player experience, arbitrarily making it multiplayer doesn't really add anything. Especially since it still runs on the creation engine, which hardly worked for single-player, let alone multiplayer.
Wow.
More on that in a minute. On top of that, I feel that the multiplayer aspect kind of makes the world less immersive. But to incentivize the oh-so-important multiplayer, the game launched without NPCs. A series known for its vast amount of NPCs and dialogue launches without NPCs. Who in the chain of command at Bethesda thought that this was acceptable?
That's pretty horrendous. And they're right. I mean, you're supposed to be the hero of the story, your character, you know, and you've survived, you know, a calamity, a nuclear thing, whatever. Here you come out of your bunker, and here you are. You're trying to survive in this new world, and there's no NPCs. Or you come out of your bunker, and then, oh look, 26,000 other people came out of their bunkers. Well, now you're not very special, are you? That completely changes the game, and in my opinion, should have been a completely different game. Like, slice it off and say, hey, we want to make something that's like Fallout in the same kind of way, but it's going to be multiplayer. We're going to call it this, you know, and it's going to be different from the single player series. Instead of just, you know, trying to roll it like it's just part of the same thing. It's really not part of the same thing at that point. You just changed everything that did not need to be changed, probably, pretty much, right? And yeah, thinking somehow that their buggy game engine and their buggy designers could make an online game that worked is pretty laughable. Obviously in hindsight, but pretty laughable. Pretty arrogant.
It took him 2 whole years of bitching and ridicule from people online to finally add him back in 2020. The map was fairly extensive, but there was really no reason to visit most places, as the content there just wasn't that interesting. The game was riddled with bugs and performance issues, which I'll put some funny clips of here, and they just gave up on trying to make skills good and said, fuck it, here's some RNG cards for perks. The questlines were boring, and on top of all of it, they tried their hardest to monetize a game that you already had to pay full price for, which they are currently still doing. Wow. At the time of me writing this, many features are essentially locked behind the Fallout 1 subscription, which you can purchase for $13 a month or $100 a year, on top of it still being somehow a $40 game. You guys want a single-player Fallout? Better subscribe then. If you choose not to line Todd's pockets, you're limited in many ways in the game, the biggest being item storage, but also cosmetics and...
So we getting the idea now that this gaming company is really only interested in the money? Are we understanding this right now? Shoddier and shoddier games as we go, giving the people what they don't want and lying to them from the stage about the games in order to get as much money as possible. Paid mods, paid subscriptions, paid this, paid that. kind of like the author of loot boxes here, and some, not loot boxes, but paid skins and stuff. Yeah, I mean, people, this is the kind of discussions we need to have about Bethesda. I mean, we need to be honest. Yeah, they made some of our favorite games in the past. Absolutely. A lot of us will say that. But let's look at the whole. Let's look at the whole. As a whole, it is a studio that lies to you and is only concerned about how much money they can milk out of your pocket. I mean, if people are going to call out Diablo 4 for all the crap they're pulling, what about Bethesda? Really, what about Bethesda?
Smaller things like that. There's also been reports of users' negative reviews being taken down on Steam, which I can't confirm or deny, so for the sake of this video, I'll post one to see if it gets taken down. I'll keep you all posted on Twitter or YouTube community tab or something about it. While the game is in a much more finished state now than it was a few years ago, it's still not comparable to the single-player games. Yes, even Fallout 4, for as much as I thought it was a downgrade to the previous ones, is still a better experience than this. This brings us to now, with their only new IP in almost 2 decades that everyone is excited for, Starfield.
Most people were excited for it, yep.
With their previous launches being as good as they were, this one would have to be pretty stellar, right?
Now, if you haven't seen my video on the numbers on Starfield lately, or you haven't seen anybody else's video on it, the numbers are far down. They're averaging 8,000 players right now. From 330,000 at their peak. That was their peak the first month, 330,000 players at one time. But in the first month, their average number of players was 140,000. In order to go from 330,000 peak down to an average of 140,000, in the first month, you had a drop from 330 to, I don't even know, man, to well below 100,000 in order to max that out at an average of 140,000. So, yeah, numbers I might not be absolutely clear on. I have to go back and look at the video, but the point is, even in the first month, they fell off hard. And every month since then, they've gone down, where they're averaging 8,000 players. I mean, there's something like on the Steam list, they're like number 50 among games. Skyrim has twice as many people playing. Fallout has twice as many people playing. And those are old games. You know, I'm not talking about Fallout 76. I guess Fallout 4, I believe. There's a bunch of really small games that are doing way better than Starfield is right now. Like they lost everybody except for the people who are a little bit crazy in the head and continue to think it's the best game ever. And again, if you like Starfield, you're allowed to like Starfield. No, nobody here, I do not say you can't like Starfield. People will like what people will like. If you tell me Starfield is a great game, we've got an issue with what you just said. Starfield is a great game to you. Yes, Starfield is a great game. No, it's not. It is a very mid game. It's a very meh game. It's just very okay. That's why it's getting negative reviews right now. Okay, so Starfield, oh boy.
You're part of Constellation now. Part of our family.
Well, the game launched to most reviews claiming it to be incredibly dull and lifeless, with uninteresting exploration and slow and clunky combat. Starfield ended up being Fallout 4 in space, but with even less interesting things populating the world.
Boring.
The game was made on the new and improved Creation Engine 2, which Todd explained significantly improves the graphics and AI, with the biggest improvement being procedurally generated content.
Where's
I don't
the
know all the
AI
ins and outs
stuff?
of the engine, however, it doesn't seem like it really improved things that much.
Where did the AI get better? Every clip I've seen, the AI looks like shit. It looks like a 15 to 20-year-old game. Oh, that's right. It's using the same rebranded again engine they've been using for the last 23 years. Terrible. The AI in this game is fucking terrible, people. Not ha ha ha, funny terrible. Just terrible, like give me my fucking money back terrible.
Still has all the same game mechanics from 2 decades ago, with the same lobotomized AI from the previous games and the same combat. Nothing feels new, and while that isn't a bad thing for everyone, I figured there would be more changes from this game that they hyped up so much.
Yeah.
For comparison, take the difference between Valve's Source Engine 1 and 2. The latest game developed on it was Half-Life Alyx and that CSGO port that's in the works. Both of which look better in graphics and lighting and have updated features to the previous engine while still maintaining that familiar look. That's how you update an engine for the modern day. On top of all of the run-of-the-mill Bethesda gameplay, the game is, by many user accounts, a loading screen simulator that suffers from poor optimization.
Yep.
Despite Todd's best claims that it isn't. I'll play that clip now, don't worry, there's a mod to fix that.
Why did you not optimize this game for PC?
We did. It's running great. It is a next-gen PC game. We really do push the technology, so you may need to upgrade your PC for this game, but it's got a lot of great stuff going on in it, and the fans are responding awesome.
Look, if you want to upgrade your PC, by all means, if you got the money to upgrade your PC and you want to upgrade your PC, upgrade your PC. Should you upgrade your PC specifically so you can play this game? No. What, do you have a head full of rocks? No, that's not a good reason to spend thousands of dollars upgrading your PC. This game is not worth $5. Run away. Guys.
That's not the only negative PR with this game. As of late, they've begun responding to negative reviews of the game, basically telling users that they're playing the game wrong, or refuting the emptiness of their worlds with, well, actual space is pretty empty too, which, yes, that's probably true. But if I'm playing an action sci-fi space game, I don't expect realism so much as I expect something entertaining.
Yeah.
In essence, the game isn't so much bad as it is forgettable and uninspired, and I don't know if that's better or worse than just being
buggy.
plain old bad. It seems like one of those games
And
everyone's
dated.
going to forget about in the coming years unless they take the No Man's Sky route and just continually add content and updates to it. And for a company with such prestige as Bethesda, I just expected better. So what can we expect for the future?
Probably should know,
Well,
but we
with
did.
mediocre game after mediocre game, it really doesn't fill me with hope for the next Elder Scrolls or Fallout game, and that's sad. These titles once hyped me up because they have a level of immersion that you don't find all the time. The grandiose feeling of exploring a massive world with tons of things to discover, or building a character that suits your specific playstyle, and completing quests using your specific strengths feels really unique and fulfilling.
Hey, if you enjoy the video, please consider subscribing to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, drop it a like, and maybe just consider doing the old dropping a comment. Let me know what you think about the state of Bethesda games, and whether you're on board with what Captain Meaty's saying or what I'm saying, or whether you got another opinion entirely. All opinions are welcome as long as we don't, call each other names and be stupid about things. Because we can get along with different opinions, I do believe. But yes, I will call you out if you state something is good and you're mistaking I like it for it is good. These are two separate statements. I like it doesn't mean it's good. It might mean you think it's good. It doesn't mean it is good. There's a difference.
Even Fallout 76 for a time, I enjoyed just wandering the world and seeing all the little details and areas, as well as the unique enemies. That was kind of fun. Bethesda seems out of touch, and in their attempts to appeal to everyone, they end up making an extremely lukewarm experience. It's just my opinion, but if I were to offer advice, I would say to scale back the scope, stop making these massive worlds with nothing in them, and craft a smaller, more detailed experience. The earlier entries had things to explore hidden around every corner, and that was some of the biggest draws for me. And two, to stop streamlining the games and trying to appeal to everyone, because generally when you try and do everything well, you just end up doing nothing well. People who like shooters will go play any number of better ones, and people who like RPGs are going to go back to playing
Don't think Bethesda, they now do
Alright,
nothing
I'm done
well.
complaining for today. Roll the outro.
All right, so thank you to Captain Meaty for the video and for allowing me to do this review of it, my reaction to it, and once again, people, don't forget to check out down below in the description of this video the original video from my Captain Meaty, The Sad State of Bethesda Games. From Miss Valley Entertainment News, just reminding you all, we're going to continue to talk about things like this, and there will be other studios and other games that do these same kind of things that we will talk about. Don't worry, they're out there, unfortunately. We're going to continue to talk about this. We're going to drag this stuff into the light so people can see what's really going on here and be aware and be informed consumers going forward. If you continue to make the same mistakes by supporting the same companies after they whoop your ass time and time again, and steal your wallet while they're at it, and you come back and buy more from them, it's your own fault. But I think there's enough people who don't really realize what's going on with some of these studios that have been around for a while, and they're maybe new to gaming or new to the studio, and they just want to pop in and grab something that sounds like it's going to be really good, like with Starfield, and they just had no idea what they were in for. They didn't see any of the red flags, and we need to make sure people are aware of what's actually happening with unscrupulous and greedy and lying companies like this. So, everybody, from Misspell Entertainment News, my name is Dread. Have yourselves a great day. Bye-bye.